Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This series of talks on the meanings of our dua has been inspired by a particular farman of Maulana Hazar Imam Noor Maulana Shah Karim al-Husseini Salawatullahi alayhi, which he made at Pune, India on 22nd February 1969. My beloved spiritual children, I came in and I heard several surahs of the Quran being recited, and I remind you of the farman which I made to you in the past. I would like each and every spiritual child not only to know the dua by heart, but to understand the meaning of the dua. It is fundamental for you and for your children and for the future of our Jamaat that each and every one of you, particularly the younger members of the Jamaat, should understand the meaning of the dua. Inspired by this particular farman, this series of talks will explore the deeper, the esoteric, the batini meanings of our dua. Our dua, as we all know, is a compulsory or an obligatory aspect of our tariqah rites and practices. All of us Shia Imami Ismaili Muslims are required to offer the prayer of dua 3 times a day, once in the morning and twice in the evening, preferably in congregation. Maulana Hazar Imam has made many farmans where he has told us that his NOOR is present in the Jamaat Khanas everywhere all the time, and therefore for us to go to Jamaat Khana and to offer our 3 daily compulsory duas is extremely important for us. I would like to give an example from nature. For instance, if we had a dry single stick and we set a match to it or light it, certainly the stick will give some light and some heat, but if you have a large bundle or a bonfire of dry sticks and you set a light to that, there will be far more light and far more heat. In the same way, although we do benefit spiritually when we offer prayers individually, but the spiritual energy which is generated by congregational prayer is something much greater and of greater benefit to us. And this is why in the faith of Islam, congregation prayer is extremely important. The second point which I want to touch on is that there is a famous prophetic tradition or a hadith of Nabi Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, in which he said that dua is the essence of ibadat. What this means is that dua is the foundation of all the other rites and practices of our tariqah. And when the foundation is strong, then all the other practices of the tariqah can build a strong edifice or a strong building on that foundation. So this is a foundational and a compulsory practice for us, and therefore it is important for us to know the meanings of the words which we recite in our daily dua. Another important point is that we do not only recite the 3 daily duas, which preferably should be a congregational prayer. In our tariqah, which is on the level of haqiqat, we are encouraged by the Imam of the time to remember God at all times or constantly. On the level of Shariat, this is not the same case. On the level of Shariat, ibadat or prayer is immersed in time. In other words, time is divided into several sections, and then prayer is offered at the set intervals. But in the time of Hakikat, or on the level of Hakikat, which is where we Ismailis are, it is the very opposite, that here in the period of Hakikat, time is immersed in ibadat, which means that there is no set time for a person to remember God. Yes, we do have the 3 du'as for which there is a set time, and that is a compulsory aspect of our tariqah. But apart from these 3 prayers, we are encouraged by our imams and our peers to do constant remembrance of God, or to do continuous zikr of the remembrance of the light of God. This concept of time divided into sections and then set prayers recited, as opposed to continuous remembrance or zikr, is a concept which is discussed by a very famous da'i called Sayyidina Nasiruddin al-Tusi, and he has written a book called Roza-i Taslim, which has been translated into English under the title of Paradise of Submission by Sayyid Dr. Jalal Badakhshani, and it has been published by the Institute of Ismaili Studies in January 2005. And it is recommended that the listeners to these talks will take the trouble to refer to this book, which has many other important points about Ismailism and Ismaili beliefs. This concept of constant prayer, is also referred to in the Farmans of Maulana Mustansir Billah II alayhi salam, who wrote a book called Pir Pandyate Jawan Mardi and sent it to the Jamaat of the Indian subcontinent, in which he uses this particular description. He says that a mu'min should always remain constantly in prayer, or a mu'min should be da'imu zikr. And this very concept is also expressed in the ginans of our peers and Sayyida Imam Begum. For instance, Pir Sadruddin says in a ginan, Uthte, Bethte, Rah Chalante, Naam Sahib Ji Ka Lijiye, which means that standing, sitting, or walking on the path, always take or remember the name of your Lord. And Sayyidina Imam Begum says in one ginan, Har dam zikr karna, which means take the name of your Lord, take the name of the Noor in every breath. These same ideas have their foundation in the Holy Quran. In the Holy Quran, in chapter 3 or Surah 3, which is called Surah Ali Imran, if we refer to ayat number 191, it reads as follows: In the creation of the heavens and the earth, and in the alternation of night and day, there are signs for men of understanding, those that remember Allah when standing, sitting, and lying down. So these 3 positions of standing, sitting, and lying down are the 3 positions which human beings have throughout the 24 hours of a day. And this, in this Quranic ayat, God is encouraging the mu'mins to, whether they are sitting or standing or sleeping, to remember the name of Allah. And this last phrase particularly reminds me of a farman of Maulana Sultan Muhammad Shah Salawatullahi Alayhi, who had made a farman during his imamat that if a mu'min remembers me last thing at night before he or she falls asleep, then their entire sleep also transforms into ibadat. I would also like to make reference to another Quranic ayat, which is in Surah 29, ayat 45, which says that prayer, meaning any type of prayer, dua, salat, tasbihat, that all these prayers are meant to fend away, to drive away indecency and evil. But the greatest thing is to remember Allah. The greatest thing is to do zikr of Allah. This is very much what we, the Shia Imam Ismailis, believe, that where we have set prayers, such as our 3 daily duas, these daily duas are very important for us. As Maulana Sultan Muhammad Shah also mentions in his memoirs on page 176, that prayer is a daily necessity, a direct communication of the spark with the universal flame. So we know the importance of daily prayers, but according to the Quran, the greatest thing is zikrullah, is the remembrance of God. And this is why our ginans and the very recent farmans of Maulana Hazar Imam, all of them place a great deal of emphasis on remembering the Noor of God, remembering the names of God, the names of the Prophet, and the names of the Imams at all times, whenever we have even a split second of space or time. In this first talk, I would like to end with one more farman of Nur Maulana Shah Karim ul Hussaini Hazar Imam, which, like the earlier farman of Pune of 1969, is published in the book of Faramin or Farmans called The Precious Gems, the Farmans of Nur Maulana Shah Karim ul Hussaini Hazar Imam. In a farman to the Ismailia Association of that time, because this is a 1967 farman, Maula Bapa told the members, the teachers, and the students of the association that we have to know the meaning of our dua, the meaning of our faith. He said, it is important that in learning parts of the Quran, you must clearly understand the meaning. If you recite parts of the Quran, certain words must represent to you a concept. If you study the Quran Sharif, this concept will become well known to you and through you to the Jamaat at large. This takes many years of study. I do not want you to think that this can be learnt easily or without hard work. But it is important that if I ask specific questions, you should be able to answer them unless they are highly intricate matters. I am ending with this farman because in our dua, as we all know, there are Quranic surahs or chapters as well as Quranic ayats. And in this farman, Maulana Hazar Imam says that if we recite any surahs or any verses of the Quran, and inshallah we will be able to more and more recite more of the Quran, that not only should we know the deeper inner meanings of the surahs and the verses, but that these meanings should then represent for us concepts. And these concepts should be known to us and to the Jamaat at large, because this will deepen our understanding of our faith, and it will give us greater satisfaction and more spiritual happiness to practice our faith. This particular series of talks is being done in this spirit of extending and deepening our knowledge for the sake of our spiritual progress and for the sake of attaining deeper spiritual satisfaction. Inshallah. Ameen. Ya Ali Madad.